If you work for a large corporation that either gives you or allows you to purchase their company stock inside of a 401k or employee stock ownership plan, you may have access to a powerful tax strategy called NUA. In today's video, we'll discuss the requirements of NUA, the tax benefits, and whether or not it may be an appropriate strategy for you. Hey everyone, my name is Jake Skellhorn, Certified Financial Planner with Spark Wealth Advisors, where we give you the confidence and clarity you deserve around your money. So let's start just by describing exactly what NUA is. NUA is basically just the growth that you experience on the stock inside of your 401k or employee stock ownership plan. There's basically three components to the equation here. Your cost basis, which is what you paid for the stock or the price that you were given it at from your employer. The market value, which is what it's currently worth as of today. And then the difference between the two, or the growth portion, is your NUA, which stands for Net Unrealized Appreciation. It's not uncommon for businesses to give company stock to employees as an incentive to keep them around. But the one downside to this is that when you withdraw the money that's invested in that stock from a 401k or employee stock ownership plan, it's taxed as ordinary income rates. When otherwise, if that stock was held in a regular taxable brokerage account, you can receive favorable long-term capital gains rates, which are lower than your income tax rate. In an effort to make up for this, the IRS allows for what's called an NUA distribution. We'll cover the requirements in just a minute, but NUA basically means that you can take that company stock from your 401k plan, move it directly into a taxable brokerage account, and if you sell the stock in the brokerage account after it's moved there, you can receive those long-term capital gains rates rather than paying ordinary income tax on the full NUA amount. When you do an NUA distribution, however, you do have to pay ordinary income tax on the cost basis of your shares. So you do have to pay some tax today as opposed to the alternative, which would be rolling over your full balance of your 401k to an IRA, which does not have any tax implications. With that said, NUA is more of a trade-off of paying some taxes now and possibly less taxes overall versus paying all taxes later on if you were to do a rollover. So again, it's more of a trade-off than a no-brainer. There are really three requirements for an NUA eligible transaction. The first one is that your 401k or ESOP plan has to be distributed in a lump sum transaction. So in this context, the IRS defines a lump sum transaction as your 401k or ESOP plan being distributed within 1 calendar year. So when you take your stock and move it into a taxable brokerage account, you have to deplete the rest of the account if you have other investments in mutual funds within the same year, even if it's in multiple transactions. The second requirement is that NUA is only available after a qualifying event. A qualifying event could be one of four things. Number one would be turning age 59 and a half. Two would be separating service from the employer that holds that 401k or ESOP plan. Third would be death, and fourth is disability. Just to expand on the third one, if you die, your beneficiaries can also take advantage of NUA inside of your plan. And not only does it have to be after a qualifying event, it has to be the first transaction after a qualifying event. So, for example, if you turn age 59 and a half and you wanted to take a small partial distribution from your 401k, but you leave the rest of it in there, if the calendar year goes by and you want to perform NUA, you're no longer eligible since you took a partial withdrawal and not a lump sum. So in that situation, you would have to wait until the next qualifying event. So if you're still working for the employer, you could wait until you separate from the employer as your next qualifying event to be eligible for NUA. And the third requirement to be eligible for NUA is that the stock has to be distributed in kind. I know we've said it already a couple times, moving your stock into a brokerage account, but it is important that it's moved in kind and not sold in the 401k beforehand, because then you would lose all of the NUA. Now, since most people that have company stock in their employer plan also have other investments, typically the way to go about it is to move your stock into the brokerage account and move any other investments into an IRA as a rollover simultaneously so that the rollover portion is not taxable. So let's compare two scenarios, one utilizing NUA and one not, just to see the potential tax benefits of this strategy. So in the top left here, we will assume that our stock has a cost basis of $100,000. The current market value is $500,000, and the value of your remaining investments in the account, such as mutual funds, is $2 million. So the blue portion of the pie chart represents your stock, and the tan portion will represent the value of your other mutual funds. In this scenario, we're going to assume that you'll need a $500,000 withdrawal regardless. Let's just say that's going to be used to pay off your mortgage before you retire, something of that nature. So in scenario 1, if you roll everything over to your IRA first, liquidate your investments in the IRA, and then take that $500,000 in cash from the IRA, that will all be taxed as ordinary income. We'll assume that you're in the 32% tax bracket with this distribution, so that'll create a tax bill of $160,000. In scenario 2, which is our NUA distribution, you'll move your stock from your 401k into the taxable brokerage account. The cost basis, again, will be taxed as ordinary income. So in this case, $100,000 will be taxed at 32% or $32,000. And then when you sell that stock to take out your cash that you need to pay off your mortgage, in this example, you'll pay the long-term capital gains rate on the NUA portion. So long-term capital gains rates, again, are typically lower than your ordinary income tax rate. In this situation, it would be 15%. So your total tax bill would be $92,000, which is almost half of what it would be in the other scenario. So at this point, you might be thinking, if you have highly appreciated company stock inside of your 401k, is NUA an appropriate strategy for me? Well, it depends. So again, since NUA is more of a trade-off than a no-brainer, you will pay income taxes in the year that you utilize the NUA transaction. So some situations where it may not make sense is if your NUA stock is with a previous employer and you're still currently working. That means you're still earning income, you might be in a higher tax bracket. Doing an NUA transaction may push you into a higher tax bracket than it's worth, since you will have to pay, again, tax on the cost basis. If you left your employer before you turned age 55, you'll also pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty on the cost basis, which again may not make it worth it in the grand scheme of things. In the example we just looked at, the company stock was what I would call highly appreciated. In other words, it's gone up quite significantly over the cost basis. It was $100,000 cost basis, $500,000 in market value. If your company stock is not highly appreciated, let's say it's only worth about $120,000, then NUA may not make sense. The juice might not be worth the squeeze in that situation, since you have such a high tax liability on the cost basis and not a whole lot of tax benefit on the NUA portion. And lastly, if you don't need to use NUA, then don't. If you have sufficient cash set aside in another investment account or savings account to pay off your mortgage in the example we discussed earlier, then it may benefit you just to use that money versus doing NUA just for the sake of it. However, NUA may be an appropriate strategy for you if you need to take money out of your 401k plan one way or another. You might as well get a tax benefit from it by moving that company stock to the brokerage account and taking advantage of those long-term capital gains rates. So again, if you need a significant portion of your retirement savings either way, and you do have company stock in your plan that's highly appreciated, then NUA is probably going to save you taxes that year. There's a couple of really important things that go along with NUA I wanted to mention as well. First thing is that it's not all or nothing when it comes to your company stock. So in the example we looked at earlier, we distributed all of it to the taxable brokerage account, but that's not required. So what I mean by that is if you only needed, say, $250,000, you can move half of that stock in that example to the taxable brokerage account and move the rest of it to an IRA. That way you're not paying taxes on any of that cost basis at all. So a lot of people think it's all or nothing, but it's not. You can pick and choose how much of the stock you want to treat as NUA. But with that said, NUA is kind of a one-time opportunity, so make sure that you know exactly how much you want to utilize before pulling the trigger. Another thing to keep in mind is that stock that has received NUA treatment is not eligible for a step-up in cost basis. Typically, in a taxable brokerage account, any stock that you've held receives a step-up in basis when it passes to your beneficiaries. In other words, when you die, your beneficiaries will receive the stock that you own with a cost basis that's equal to the market value as of the time of your death. So they would not have to pay typically any capital gains taxes if they were to sell that stock right away. However, stock that has received NUA treatment does not get a step up in basis, so they will have to pay capital gains taxes when they sell that stock. Also, when you move stock from your 401k or ESOP plan to the brokerage account, you're not required to sell the stock immediately in the brokerage account. You can simply hold on to it and hope that it increases in value more. In that case, any subsequent gains from the time that it entered the brokerage account will be treated as either short-term or long-term capital gains, depending on how long you held it for starting at that point. So, for example, when that $500,000 of stock hits the account, if it grows to $550,000 over the next 6 months, and you sell the stock after 6 months, you'll pay the long-term capital gains rate on the NUA portion, and then the extra $50,000 of gains that it experienced in the brokerage account will be taxed at short-term capital gains rates since you only held it for 6 months after it hit the account. So as you can see, NUA can be a powerful tax strategy when it comes to company stock held inside of a 401k. Definitely important to look at your unique circumstances before making any decisions and whether or not you in fact need that money anyway. You should never make the NUA decision based on taxes alone. Definitely look at the full picture before deciding whether or not it's worth taking advantage of. Again, my name is Jake Skellhorn with Spark Wealth Advisors. If you'd like to see more about what we do for our clients, visit us at sparkwealthadvisors.com. Thanks for watching.